The rigors of mountain biking can really dish out serious abuse. As a family that loves mountain biking, it's been challenging for our littlest member to keep up on the climbs, descents, and undulations in between. There have been a few full suspension 20-inch rigs he's tested, but none that he's been able to call his own. He's often been vocal about his distaste for rough, rocky trails and commented on his desire to obtain his own full suspension bike. A full suspension bike can alleviate the fatigue and wear from rough trails, as I'm quickly relearning with my new hardtail, and will allow kids that are doing adult-sized rides to enjoy the same benefits as their parents. Yes, there may be a little more weight, but it's worth the extra effort to be comfortable and in control. Climbing will always be the biggest challenge, but having suspension that helps the wheels track over rocks and ledges keeps the traction from slipping. A lighter weight package like the Maxwell 24 also provides the ability for our youth to continue to forge out on adventurous cross-country rides while enjoying the benefits of modern suspension and geometry built in. If your family's into the bike park scene or just the downhill aspect of mountain biking, then your kids will definitely appreciate the added comfort on the trails that comes with suspension. Not only does suspension add a little pop into the jumps, but it also reduces their fatigue, allowing them to ride longer and faster over rough terrain. We found this to be the case with our son. He's all but started dropping me on the jump trails. As with a few other brands out there, Trailcraft has a large selection of components and builds one can order with their kiddo's sweet whip. There are several house-branded components from kid-sized cranks and bars to the stem, seat post, and headset. There are also options to change some parts, like the seat post from a rigid one to a dropper post, and a carbon wheel upgrade. The most important factor is that these components have been designed and tooled to fit the appropriate age and size of the rider. The build my son is riding, the Trailcraft Maxwell 24 Pro, came with a Shimano Deore drivetrain. My son has not had any troubles with the trigger shifter or derailleur thus far, and that's just the way we like it. A clutch derailleur and single narrow-wide front chainring keep chain duty in line, pun intended. In conjunction with the trigger shifters, the shifts are smooth and concise on each cassette ring. Other components like the Stan's Crest wheels and Kenda Boost Pro tires are top-notch. This tubeless system offers copious amounts of traction and keeps rolling resistance to a minimum. The wheels are durable and have stood up to several downhill days along with weekly cross-country riding on the local trails for several months and have not needed truing. The frame itself is aluminum with modern geo angles and a 4-bar suspension design. The lava red-orange paint scheme chosen is easy to spot on the mountain and really adds to the flair of the whole bike. I wish I had my own adult-sized Maxwell. It really is that awesome. The suspension is certainly one of the highlights of this bike and works flawlessly thus far. My son has been pleading and begging for a soft ride ever since he demoed a Spawn Rokasuda at Whistler a few years ago. With time in the saddle and larger rides on the horizon, we decided it was time to give him the comfort he so longingly desired. The Maxwell 24 Pro comes with a Rockshox Reba fork in the front. With 120 millimeters of travel, this fork is big enough, but not too big for an 8-year-old. The fork and shock both came set up and tuned for our son's weight. The fork is plush through its travel, but offers noticeable support through small bumps and keeps my son riding high in the travel. The rear shock, a Rockshox Monarch R, is quite similar to the matching fork. With matching travel of 120 millimeters, the shock works in conjunction with the fork and the pivot kinematics to provide a supple ride that supports the rider through rough terrain and keeps the rear end tracking over small bumps while remaining plush on bigger hits. Stopping is just as important as being able to propel forward on a bike. As previously mentioned, the dual suspension quality of the Maxwell has enabled the bike to roll through rough terrain more efficiently with greater speed. Part of that experience is having quality brakes that can withstand the rigors of rough riding in greater speeds. Beyond that is the ability to modulate and feather the brakes to maintain momentum and get the maximum efficiency from one's brakes. The Shimano Deore XT brakes found on the Trailcraft Maxwell Pro 24 are top-notch. My son has been able to modulate his hydraulic disc brakes through rough, loose, and steep berms in the bike park. He's been able to descend straightaways down hills with the proper speed and braking power to slow for the turns ahead. The Maxwell 24 has a 15mm through axle in the front wheel to match the Reba fork. The rear end, however, is a quick-release skewer on a 9mm axle. It'd be nice to see at least a 12mm quick-release skewer in the back, but it's not a deal breaker. The through axle in the front still helps the bike to track and remain stiff in corners overall, and the rear end is built quite robust with the quick release. The Maxwell's designers understand the industry and sport, and keeping weight down, especially for smaller humans, allows one to pedal longer and truly enjoy the experience. Although weights are coming closer to that of adult bikes, the Trailcraft Maxwell 24 is lighter than some hardtail and fully rigid 24-inch bikes. I sincerely thought my son would struggle when transitioning from his 20-inch bikes to this much bigger, full suspension rig. I couldn't have been more wrong. Part of that reasoning is because of the lightweight build. He's able to throw the bike around and maneuver easily, and that is quite apparent as he passes me on the downhills now. The Maxwell 24 is expensive. It costs as much as a true adult mountain bike. It's heavier than some high-end hardtails and fully rigid 24-inch mountain bikes, but with good reason. The expense is really quite affordable when you consider the design, build, and component specs. Full suspension bikes will always weigh more than hardtails due to the weight of the suspension and linkage. General enthusiasts that want a nice bike for their children will understand. It's a bit like the e-bike controversy within the industry. Some have dissenting opinions, but there are several people who want their children to have bikes as nice as themselves. That's who the Maxwell's for. If you like to mountain bike and you want your kid to like mountain biking, then buy them a nice bike. I know the expense is a challenge and not feasible for everyone. Nicer equipment lasts longer, it's more durable, and it's easier to ride. That's the truth of the matter. The Trailcraft Maxwell 24 has transformed my son's riding ability. His skills immediately started progressing, and the last few months have been an absolute blast to ride with him. I no longer have to wait in the bike park runs down the mountain. The number of laps have increased. The number of smiles and giddy giggles have increased. Trailcraft builds high-quality frames with top-notch component specs that will last and provide durability. These bikes have a big resale value, and for good reason. The design is that of an adult mountain bike and by veterans of the industry. I'm excited to see the mountaintops, lake views, and aspen forests of Idaho with my son. We have a full summer plan with rides and bike park days ahead. I know we will see his skills progress on his Trailcraft even more as we explore and adventure deeper into the woods. I hope you can bring your kiddos along too. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Thanks for watching.